Okay, you're ready to go.
Thank you, Vanessa. This is the Town of Southborough, Massachusetts virtual meeting of the Personnel Board for Wednesday, February 10th, 12 p.m. We are gaveled in at 12:04. Welcome, everyone. All board members are present with the exception of Mr. Nixon, who is absent. We are joined by Personnel Director, Town Administrator Mark Purple, Vanessa Hale, Assistant Town Administrator, and Finance Director Brian Ballantyne. Welcome all. Good to see you. I'm asked to read this statement into the record. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at https://www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting, period. That's my audition to be an auctioneer in my next life. Okay, moving on. We are on agenda 2A, approval of minutes. The first set of minutes is for Chair should note, we're being recorded and all votes will be by roll call. Thank you. Now to 2A. We have meeting minutes in the packet that were distributed to the board in advance of the meeting for January 13th. And those are at packet 1 to 6. Comments, issues with the minutes of January 13th. Any comments from the board? The chair seeing no comments on the minutes of January 13th and they having been distributed to the board in advance of the meeting, reading is waived and the chair approves the meeting minutes as presented in the packet. The second set of minutes is at packet 7 to 9. This meeting minutes for January 27th, 2021. These were also distributed via the board packet. Reading is waived. Comments from the board members on the minutes of January 27th, 2021. The chair seeing none, the minutes of January 27th, 2021 are approved as presented in the packet. Thank you, board. All right, we're on to 3A, reports. I have just one item in the packet. You had a memo. This is page 10. As you recall, the fire chief was before us with a request for a new Schedule D for on-call firefighters. Also a request to increase the stipend for the emergency management coordinator under Schedule E. You can see chief advises that he is withdrawing his Schedule E request. So all that's pending is the Schedule D request, and we will see him at our next meeting with that in March. So just wanted to notify you that Schedule E request has been withdrawn. All right, we are on 3B, Personnel Director. Mr. Purple requested that I put an item, Selectmen's Office Reorganization, on the agenda. And Mr. Purple, you have the floor. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will be brief with this. As I think I may have noted prior to the board, we've been taking a look at reorganizing our office a little bit. The thrust of it was the administrative assistant's position. When Carol Ostrich retired, we have taken a look at the hours. It's currently 34 hours a week, and we've looked at the capacity. I think that probably we can do with a little bit less in our office. We're becoming a little leaner and meaner in terms of how we do things and what we do. And so the position has been restructured to provide, a significant number of hours to the treasurer collector's office. So I've been working with Brian Ballantyne on that, also to try to help some of those other departments in the townhouse that don't have administrative staff primarily conservation, but I think on the periphery, IT and EDC, although their needs are a lot less. So the other piece of that is the job descriptions for the assistant town administrator and also the executive assistant. Those hadn't been touched in a while. I don't think Vanessa's have been touched in quite a while. And I know that Lori's had not been done since, since she first came here. Obviously, with efficiencies created and the things that are expected out of those positions, there's been additional items that have been added to the responsibilities that we thought it was good to make a change. Brought all of that to the Board of Selectmen, and we had a fairly good discussion. They are in agreement with the revisions to the administrative assistant position as it is being constituted. They would like to do some additional, I will call it wordsmithing. And so I'm taking additional comments from the members before it comes back. But I do want to, I was hoping to have something for you for this agenda, Madam Chair, because I do know that you're going to need to take a look at this. You may want to do JAQ on it to make sure it's in the right place, given the additional responsibilities added to the position. But I don't have the comments back yet, so I'm putting out another reminder to the board so we can try and move on this. You should be seeing. I don't want to wait until your March meeting, but I can't tell you when I'd like, because you've made the offer that if we do have things that need special meetings, especially in this environment, you would consider trying to accommodate. I can't ask you for anything yet because I don't know when I'd need it. And then obviously the other two job description revisions I will, be providing you. I think that there's a change, especially in the executive assistant's position, a little bit of an add-on to the title, reflecting the procurement responsibilities. And those are things that, you may need to consider. I don't know if it's going to be an SAP change. I would leave that to your discretion. And again, whether or not you have to run one or both of those through the JAQ process, just to determine that, yes, everything is graded appropriately. In process, moving forward, board has basically said they're fine with that, providing some additional comments to me in terms of the wording, and then I'll be reaching back out to you if it makes sense to try to do something between now and your regular March meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Purple. Just a couple of comments, one admin. So for the board, these job descriptions were sent to me. I put them in the packet just because I knew Mr. Purple was going to be chatting about them. They are at pages 11 to 15. Just a suggestion for whoever generates these, stamp them draft.
Yep.
They were not stamped draft. I'm a kind of like that's my thing, the QC and all that. So if you stamp them draft or work in progress. My first question is, Mark, did you say that the BOS is continuing to give input on all of them or just some of them?
I have asked for comments from the board regarding any of them. I do think that the comments that probably I'm expecting are probably the administrative assistant. I do want to acknowledge, Betsy, that Jay, helped to try and craft some of these job descriptions. I think were, I'm going to say, significantly longer and a little more verbose. Jay is not a man of many words. And I think that it was good to get from a hiring perspective when you're looking at the job description. I think the funniest comment I can remember when Jay was talking with Brian and I about this, and Brian had wanted something in there, and I think it was the first requirement was, must have familiarity with Mass General Law. And Jay said, most applicants, if you're looking for that and they see that, they're going to say, I'm out. If you're requiring that knowledge going in, that's going to be problematic. So it was helpful to try and put a little bit of realism into what we're looking for, what you require and what are the nice to haves, but then can be learned on the job. So I think the comments I'm waiting for are more on the administrative assistant position than the other two. I have asked the board to make that the priority because that's the position that I can't go out and hire a position that doesn't have an approved job description, especially when we've changed, how it's going to serve two departments now instead of one.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Purple. So just one comment. I remember early on when I came on the board, we were using the services of a consultant, Joellen Earl, GovHR. And in conjunction with the current classification system that we have, that was a result of her study. One piece of advice I remember that she had given the town, and again, we adopted it before I came on the board, but we had conversations with Joellen, was to try to keep job descriptions like admin assistant as general as possible so they cut across all departments. Are you mindful of that? Are you trying to craft an administrative assistant position that would speak to all departments? Or are you really trying to specialize for your needs? I wanted to know if that was a goal, because that was something that the consultant had told us was a piece of the system that we currently have. How she designed our current system.
So I think in theory, yes, but because this is a shared position, I think it's a little bit different, because there are things that are going to be necessary for this office, and then a different set of things that are responsive to Brian and the things that the treasurer collector's office is needing. So I'm not sure that, something off the shelf in terms of an administrative assistant job description is going to fit here. I'm kind of looking sideways at Vanessa to see if she thinks that, if we can take a more generalistic administrative assistant job description and try to put everything in, I just don't know that makes sense for this particular position. I agree in principle, though.
My only concern is, are you looking, we currently have the position of admin assistant in the SAP. Mm-hmm. It has, the part-time one has a job description on file. Are you looking to create a different specialized, will this come back to me, do you anticipate, with BOS/treasurer's office admin assistant? A title. Are you looking to create a separate job for your admin?
What do you mean? In other words, okay, so I see what you're saying. So is it going to be
under a different title?
Yeah. A different title. So right now, if you look at Schedule A, I just want this board to be able to tailor its comments down the road to what It is you're looking for. So we have admin assistant in Schedule A at 3, and we have admin assistant 2 at 3. So we propose that we take out admin assistant 2. Okay, and we have an old job description on file. Mm-hmm. When you update the job description and make this what you need, are you going to ask us how we're going to have we're either going to have 2 job descriptions for the same position, or we're going to specialize this job description? I just want to know how you want to deal with it administratively.
I don't think you're going to need a new title in the SAP in my in my opinion. I think that it's going to retain the administrative assistant title, but the content is going to reflect the shared nature of the position.
All right. At one time, I thought I understood Mr. Dietz to say that we could have a general job description for a position, for example, admin assistant, and then there could be a list of tasks specific to a department, like more of an addendum.
Right, like we did, I think, with the business administrator position.
Yeah, so I'm not sure the approach that you're taking here. Are we trying to clean up our job description for admin assistant and then craft an addendum for your needs? Or are we creating a whole new job description for administrative assistant position that's specialized to you and Brian's department?
At this point, we're doing the latter.
Okay.
But at this point, I don't know if it's penny wise and pound foolish to try to start over to redo something else. Although, no, I like I said, I'd be willing to take a look at that and take a look at, because I think the any content that the selectmen were concerned with and everything, and that would be attached in terms of addendum. Vanessa, do we have a generalized administrative job description?
a very old one, not an updated one. The only thing I wanted to add to the conversation was, I think if we kept, this job title and this general job description, that would be applicable to other departments. I think the only thing that, maybe goes in addendum or perhaps is just worded differently is the position overview, because it talks about, the selectman's office and the treasurer collector's office. This is the first person that, we're kind of treating not as a floater, because they would be housed in the selectman's office or the treasurer's office for all of their hours, but they would be assisting multiple departments. So that piece could go in an addendum, or it could be just left where it is under that overview category.
I mean, to take a step back, Mark's job, Vanessa's job is to give the Board of Selectmen's office what they need. So I applaud you, and I'm not trying to make it more difficult. You figure out what you want. But then once that's approved, this board has to figure out where it goes in the SAP and how we deal with it legislatively. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to alert you to the fact that, to me, it looks like you have a specialized job description that might be called administrative assistant to the something something. And my question is, we can all agree on a path forward. Probably nobody wants to create a new position in the SAP. It's exactly what Joe Ellen told us not to do, right. Proliferate job descriptions. So maybe in doing this, we should have a dialogue about, maybe we just have this and we list the special things as an addendum. So we follow what Jay had said originally, which was one general job description and then, specialize it.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you can take
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You could take the current administrative assistant job description, have a general section, and then you could have specific ones maybe underneath that. So I don't want to tell anybody how to do their job, but that's just kind of my observation that we have that issue. And my second question was, Mark, do you anticipate requesting reclassification and upgrade on any of these?
I don't know if the additional responsibilities with regards to the treasurer's office is going to potentially cause a reclassification. I think that I would request for personnel board to take a look at it. I think that the executive assistant to the Board of Selectmen, Lori Esposito's position, there is a title change, and some of the responsibilities. I would request that also go through the JAQ just to make sure if it's is it in the right place, or do you think that it should be changed? Vanessa's, the assistant town administrator, there's adjustments to it, but I don't know how much higher you can make, you can bring that up. I don't know whether that requires a grade change as well, but I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference if you're doing it for one or two, that you don't do it for all three, just to make sure everything is in the right place.
Okay, so you were likely going to submit a request to have these analyzed. And we'll probably have to hire somebody to do it, because I don't think Vanessa should be doing a regrading, and with all due respect, doing a regrading analysis. Maybe Jay and I can run the JAQ. So I think that's fine. I think that's appropriate anytime we have a major change. So I was just wondering.
Well, I think that, Vanessa could do the other two. But I know that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Betsy, but I believe that you and Jay, or you and Barry, had done, basically, Barry's saying no. Just check it.
Jay and
in other
Vanessa.
words, you did you all did the JAQ, and then you kind of got together, and thankfully, usually you're coming out in the same ballpark on those things. So no, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. So at what point would you want input from the members of the board? For me personally, my input would be probably largely confined to the assistant town administrator job description that we have, because that person has a connection to the personnel board on a regular basis.
Right.
Your admin and the executive assistant do provide support, but it's rare.
Right.
Like Lori types up the SAP
Yep.
for us in connection with doing the town meeting. But really assistant town administrator, and something that I noticed is this person spends a lot of time supporting the Board of Selectmen. And I think you've kind of changed some things, and maybe we could get into this in March, because it's not really on the, well, it's on the agenda in your report, but I do have some substantive comments about the assistant town administrator
Sure.
vis-a-vis personnel board, such as something I've raised before, which is whether or not you see a supervisory role for the personnel board, and whether we should be contributing to the personnel evaluation of the assistant town administrator in their role with the personnel board, which I understand that role changes depending on who's chair of the board. In the past, Vanessa had a more active role before I came on the board, more as an advisor. She sat at the table. From what I observed in just a few meetings, she was an advisor to the personnel board, not just an administrative supporter. And people on the board would look to her for guidance, and she would give guidance. I handled things a little differently, given that she's an SAP employee. I asked her to step away from the table a couple years ago when I became chair. She does provide administrative support. In fact, anybody who provides administrative support to the Board of Selectmen is going to be a SAP employee probably. So I don't view that so much as a conflict. I think if she were to be an advisor to the personnel board, that gets in. And I've had this discussion with her. Yep. So in terms of substantive feedback in this question of whether or not personnel should play a role in the performance evaluation of the assistant town administrator, would you like us to wait until you get your feedback from the Board of Selectmen? Would you like that to be something we discuss with them? I feel like sometimes we all get in our silos. BOS addresses these with you separately, then yep. You'll report back to us. It's just no fault to anyone. That's the process.
I think that the takeaway from the last selectmen's meeting was, and again, it's a little bit varied. You've got members on the Board of Selectmen. I said this at the meeting. You've got members that want to get into the details. There are other members that say, look, we do policy, you do administration. This is administrative. You don't even need to be here for this. So we've had the discussion with the board. There's no intention to bring it back. If they have other items they want to talk about. So now really, I think, I think the discussion is between us. Okay. It's between me carrying it to you, and then we can make those changes. Two points on what you said. First of all, I agree with you. Doing a job description, which obviously it seems to be more of a moment in time. It's more of a fluid, kind of a fluid document, because you're right. Vanessa's responsibilities in terms of personnel, they don't change very much in terms of what I expect for her, but or of the position, but they do change with regards to the personnel board, and they have changed depending on who is chair and what the board needs at the time. With regards to the board offering comments on her evaluation, I have no problem with that whatsoever. We've talked about the potential of, again, speaking of fluid documents, the personnel evaluation form. There was a comment field many moons ago and iterations ago of that document that did have a spot for board comments if, in fact, the position was responsible to a board or committee. That disappeared, several iterations ago, and everything in that had some comments. I think it makes sense to bring it back. So that's something that we should probably, look at sooner rather than later.
Great. And I note that in the new job description, you have left the personnel functions very succinct, as Mr. Dietz usually is. The job is to research, with respect to personnel board, research and make recommendations to boards and committees on all facets of personnel function. So I guess that's what I'm looking at. I don't think it's an insult to any past or present holder of the position that it raises an eyebrow, at least to me, to ask an SAP employee to comment on certain changes. I guess I'm thinking of the discussion about whether or not we want to change vacation accrual or sick leave. Do we really want an SAP employee playing an important advisory role to a board that may be cutting their benefits? So maybe just think about how we want to phrase. admin support, no problem. And I started to have this dialogue with Vanessa, so I don't want to take up the whole day. Maybe we can have this discussion at a future meeting when these are in final from the Board of Selectmen. But I think that's something that needs to be addressed. It's been suggested to me by some folks that it's, do you really want an SAP employee advising the board in matters such as how much raise to give to SAP employees? And and I had a frank discussion with Vanessa about it, and some of it does make her uncomfortable. She would, she can speak for herself, but asking her, oh, what do you think your raise ought to be this year? And for her to try to tread the line of being an impartial observer and historian and advisor versus being an active SAP employee. Gets a little messy sometimes, at least.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but I think it's a detriment to the board not to utilize that expertise and that information. And, and again, she doesn't have a vote. And I'm not sure that, no detriment, I don't mean this in a detrimental way to Vanessa, but I'm not sure that she has influenced any decisions that this board has made with regards to those items either.
Okay,
So,
fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to hog the microphone. I guess I'm asking, when do you want to hear from other board members? Would this be an appropriate time to get board input? Would you like me to put this on the agenda as an item for March? Do you want to wait until the selectmen are done doing their thing?
Yeah, I think I would put a pin in it for your March agenda.
Okay.
I'm hoping that I'd love to be able to come to you before the end of the week and say, Madam Chair, I'd love a special meeting just to try to get us moving on the administrative assistant job description. I know the board had said they'd really like to get this position filled so that we can try to provide some of the assistance, especially to the treasurer collector's office that is anticipated with this position.
In light of COVID, and I can't speak for Jay, who has a pretty active schedule, but I imagine he would prefer a short, spontaneous meeting over making this meeting long. Usually your issue, Jay, right, is a hard stop at 2.
I always have a hard stop at 2 because I have a 2:00 meeting that's recurring every week.
Okay. Would a quick meeting in between or before March be a problem for you guys? Half an hour to discuss a job description? Got thumbs up on that? Generally, okay.
I'd rather do that.
Okay, so Mark, we'll leave the ball in your court. I would
Okay,
ask
thank
members
you.
of the board to please review these job descriptions, have your comments ready to go, and you can let us know, Mark, when you're ready.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Did anybody have, I talked a lot about my thoughts. Did anybody, before we leave this, have something they wanted Mark to consider or relay to the Board of Selectmen, something you felt was important about these job descriptions? Anybody? I should open it up to the board. Go ahead.
Well, I
Go ahead.
had comments, but I think that we should wait out of respect for the BOS and Mark to go forward. So I'm gonna hold.
Thank you.
I can hold too, and I can communicate directly with Mark about the question I have. So
Yeah.
in the interest of moving forward.
My only concern is if some member of the board, such as myself, has an issue that really should be communicated to the Board of Selectmen, we don't have a mechanism for doing that right now. They're
Email.
reviewing it separately from us. So I don't know. Be nice to have a little more cross communication. So maybe we can work on that. All right. Anything else on this matter before we go on? Thank you all. All right. We're on 3C, Assistant Town Administrator. Vanessa, you have the floor.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Good. We're on
Um,
3C. This is packet page 16.
Yep. We just have one new employee appointment to report to the board of a part-time dispatcher, Daniel Marrera. He is still working on getting his physical and training dates scheduled, so he is not physically started yet, but I did want to report that he has been appointed by the board.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Any comments or questions for Ms. Hale? All right, we will move on to 4A. We have new business. We have Mr. Donovan, and I don't know if we have a member of the library trustees accompanying him. I don't see who's
No.
here. Do we have Ryan for 4A? Oh, and we have Marguerite. Welcome.
Thanks. Hi.
Can you usher in Ryan?
I am just watching you off the town website because I have been unable to raise Ryan in the last hour on the phone.
Oh, so we don't have
sorry,
Ryan.
Marguerite. We've been having computer trouble because everything is updating. I'm in Microsoft Update, weeds right now.
All right, but Mr. Donovan and Ms. Landry from the library trustees are present. You can hear us and participate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all and welcome. Even though I can't see your faces, it's good to know you're there. All right, 4A, this is Mr. Donovan's request for tuition reimbursement for this fiscal year. This is packet page 17. And this is on the agenda at my discretion. This arrived in my inbox in mid-January, couple of weeks after the deadline of December 31st. So a threshold question for this board is whether or not you would like to entertain this tuition reimbursement request, even though it was after deadline. And if you do, whether or not you want to open it up, the deadline, to other SAP employees. I haven't heard anything from anybody else. And Vanessa, you haven't gotten anything from anyone else, right?
She's gone.
Vanessa's gone.
Yeah. She's gone. She stepped away for a minute, it looks like.
Okay, I presume she would have told me. And so I open it up to board consideration of whether or not so we're not granting the request. The threshold question is, do you want to entertain the request? Then you can get to the merits of the request. So does any board member want to speak on the propriety of this board accepting a tuition reimbursement application after the deadline?
May I speak?
You have the floor, Ms. Jasinski, please.
Okay, we have a tuition reimbursement request. It is after the deadline. I don't believe that we should be entertaining it after a deadline. It sets a precedent that we would make exceptions constantly throughout the year, and I don't think we should do that. Another thought of mine is this is not tuition reimbursement. This actually, after reading Ryan's application, this seems to fall more under employee development to me than tuition reimbursement. This is a certification program. This actually doesn't fall within the purview of his job description. This is certifying him for construction projects and other things going forward. There's also a question of why the building department and or our facilities department not overseeing these. Why are we entertaining paying for him to get a certification for construction issues going on at the library? I think it's kind of stepping on the toes of two other departments. That's not his job description. I don't think he really needs it, but if the Board of Trustees really wants him to have it, it can be paid for one of two ways, out of their budget, or we can consider or should consider the employee development. It is definitely not a tuition reimbursement, in my opinion.
Okay, I don't have a current budget in front of me. Hang on. Do we have, Vanessa, do you have a budget in front of you?
I do.
Dorian, you do. What do we have in the, so you're, as an alternative, you're suggesting employee development. What do we have? Do you have the last, I didn't get an expenditure ledger for this meeting. Do you have the expenditure ledger from the last meeting?
Oh, I will grab it. I have 3,200 in there, but hang on, I'm not sure this is
I can pull it up.
I've got it in the last packet in front of me. Hang on.
I think we just ought to take a look. I've got the packets. All right, so there was an expenditure ledger in the packet from our last meeting dated January 21st.
Yeah, there's 3,200 in there.
3,200 and it hasn't been spent. So I would hear from other board members about whether or not you want to consider this as employee development rather than tuition reimbursement. Then we don't have to get to the deadline issue or create a precedent for extending the deadline.
For a tuition reimbursement, when other people are doing it, is it 100% related to what their job is doing? Or is it just they're taking a class that could be unrelated to their job? If that's what the norm has been, then I guess to me, it doesn't really matter.
So Jay, this benefit was not well defined in the past. When I became chair, I had asked Vanessa to do a summary for me of how it had been used. And now we have a policy and everything that is said about it. So we took it out of the SAP and we put it in a policy, and the policy is in your packet at page 40 to 41. So it's currently defined to the employees by our policy, and that's in 40 to 41. It has to be, and Jay, you wrote this, so I'm sure it's very well done. The employee and manager must meet. The employee and manager discuss the pursuit of a specific degree or class in connection with the employee's individual development plan. And the application has to be related to the employee's individual development plan. And that's what we put into effect last July. Because there had been not a defined, and the history that Vanessa gave me shows that it has been given for both classwork and licensure. So I pulled up a memo that I wrote to this board, 2.5 years ago on the tuition reimbursement. Vanessa had gone through the history and then I summarized it. So 1 year we funded some MBA courses for Mr. Ballantyne. That was money well spent. We've reaped the reward of your degree many times, Brian. In fiscal 2010, we helped an employee with a prep course for their licensure exam. In 2011, we funded an employee for an HVAC certification. In fiscal 2017, we funded Mr. Donovan for an MMA certification. So it hasn't strictly been a college course towards a degree. In Brian's case, it was a graduate degree. In other cases, I see here certification. So I'm not sure the current request is out of line with where tuition reimbursement has gone before. We currently have a policy that defines what it should be, and it defines what we reimburse with reference to the development plan. So in short, I think the two concepts are linked. Tuition and employee development are linked. So I think the question is whether or not we think this should be funded. And then Dorian has asked us to reconsider the tuition reimbursement policy for next year. So if we think we need to tighten it up further, we can. So I'm not, to answer the question in short, I don't think there's been a huge delineation between employee development funds and tuition reimbursement funds. If that's something the board wants to get down into and make those decisions, we can. But I don't think it's been done in the past specifically. And we have given money under tuition reimbursement for something that is certification. If we want to look at that, we can do that under the discussion of how to change the tuition reimbursement moving forward. But it is what it is for now. We have funds in either budget. I'm not sure it really matters if we support this. The question is whether or not we need to let the other employees know that we're reopening the tuition reimbursement guideline. So that's the issues, and I'm happy to hear from any other board member. Anybody else have a comment?
I guess my question for Ryan, is, was it a matter of you not knowing that you would be interested in taking these courses before the expiration of the time, or is there some other reason for the delay?
Sure, I can speak to that. So I had originally planned to take the classes in person last year, and I kind of waited too long, I would say, because I was hoping that they would offer them in person again. That didn't happen. The program has gone completely online. So I had also, this isn't the full request for the full cost of all the classes. I think the application noted that. I had gotten, Vanessa had emailed us about an application through the, I think it's the MMMA, right? For a grant, a scholarship opportunity. So I had gotten a scholarship, and then a lot of this was just bad timing, I would say. I ended up getting notification about the scholarship, and when I signed up for the classes, it was about a week after the deadline for the reimbursement, the tuition reimbursement through you guys. So I did note to the chair, you know, I understand that because this application went in after the deadline, if that is a reason why it doesn't, you deny the request, I would understand that.
And is the scholarship limited to a specific time period, or can it be carried over?
I don't know. I was going to get in touch with the person who awarded the scholarship, but honestly, there was no reason not for me not to take the classes online, I would say.
I can,
you know, I
answer
preferred to
that.
do them in person. So, sorry, go ahead, Vanessa.
That's okay. It's a scholarship through the Mass Municipal Managers Association that Ryan received, and I believe it can be carried over. So it's not going to expire on June 30th, the funding through the scholarship.
And if we said we were not going to accept it, the application at this point in time, would it still be timely for you to take the course in the next go around for us? Or would that be too late for you to use the skills that you're going to acquire? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I completed the first class last week, so I'm already signed up, so.
Anybody else? Comments?
Can I speak to it? From the floor?
Absolutely, Marguerite. Ms. Landry, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am the chair of the Board of Trustees. We fully support Ryan doing this and getting funding for it. There are really two reasons that we thought it was valuable. One is that at some point we want to enlarge the library or build a new library, and the fact that he will have this qualification will enhance our ability to get grant money to start to do that project. That's one reason we support it. And the other is that we felt good, basically cross-training for a town employee to have this skill. It brings another person into the town who has knowledge of procurement. And that was also another reason we thought it was worth supporting. And as far as the deadline being missed, I think that was bad luck, but the Board of Trustees fully supports Ryan moving forward with this training and getting funding for it if you are able to do it. Thank you.
Betsy, if we're going to fund this, he's missed a deadline on a tuition reimbursement, and I don't think we should consider opening that up, but we could fund it if we're going to do that through employee development. I think we have to kind of fix the muddled lines of tuition reimbursement versus employee development. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying that I'm very strongly against opening up the tuition reimbursement. He's missed the deadline. And I feel very strongly about that, the same way I did on the scholarship committee. The deadline is the deadline. We have money somewhere else that we could use to pay for this if we chose to do it. So that is the avenue I would suggest we take.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. I'm of two minds, you know, there's always two. We have money in the budget for employee development. I'd hate to see it unspent. I don't view my role as judging what the library trustees think is best for the development of their library director. If this is something he's discussed with his governing board and they think this is part of his long-term development, I defer to the library trustees. It does seem to me that in recent years, the library has been a construction zone as much as a center for learning. And if that's what's needed to do his job, and as Ms. Landry has said, will position them better for a building project. And I'm mindful of these things. I was a library trustee 100 years ago. So I defer to them on the substance of this request. I am loath to open up the tuition reimbursement deadline because I think in fairness to everyone, we would have to open it up to everyone. And that brings with it the risk that people will not take our deadline seriously. This board has been really good about trying to set process and make things more transparent and have a path to things. And I think the only thing militating against that is COVID is a crazy year. So I guess you could say, well, this year, everybody's schedule was topsy-turvy because of COVID. So this year we're going to waive the deadline, but I don't think it's a good precedent. I see no reason why we shouldn't entertain this as a request for employee development funds and look at it as such. And then when we get to the discussion on the tuition reimbursement policy, I agree with Ms. Jasinski. Let's add a little more specificity so we don't have these issues in the future. I'm all about clarifying the path forward the next time this happens. So I am not in favor of an extension of the tuition reimbursement deadline unless we do it for everybody. And I don't think that's a great idea, but I do think this overlaps definitely with employee development. And so I don't know if the board wants to vote on it now, if you want to think about it. Again, this is not a tuition benefit. Mr. Donovan is going to take these courses regardless. This is a benefit of reimbursement. So he's going to take them anyway. And this would be a reimbursement. So it's not whether or not he's going to take the courses. Does the board feel ready to vote at this time? Just somewhat, Dorianne, do you want to make a motion to fund the $885 under the employee development budget? Is that something, is the board ready to discuss it?
Is everybody ready to vote or discuss, or do you want to hold off?
You want to?
I agree with both points. I'm ready to do that. And I do not want to extend the deadline either. And if we do, we have to let everybody know. And we don't know how many people said, oh, I missed the deadline, therefore I'm not even going to bother trying. So it's not fair to have one person do it when nobody else had the opportunity. And we don't know if somebody would have said, oh, I missed the deadline, but I'm going to apply anyways. They may have just said, oh, I missed it. That's the rules. So I'm not in favor of moving the deadline either.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. So the only question is whether the board wants to, I sense an agreement in principle to take this up under employee development, it will be $885 out of $3,200. If anyone has anything to say about spending that percentage, Brian, help me out. What's the number? 900 out of 3,200. That's a little less than a third, maybe, of the employee development budget would be for one employee. Oh,
Brian, you're muted.
you're muted. I'm just kidding, Brian. Just need a little help with the math on that.
28%.
Thank you.
You were
See,
close.
that advanced degree that the board funded in part some years ago paid off. Thank you, Brian.
Do we have anything else in the pipeline for employee development that may be coming up that we need the funds for? I mean, should we hold till March to think about this and take a look and see what's coming down?
We approved funding Mark Way to do a class on development of board chairs and folks who have SAP employees.
And what was that, 300?
It might have been close to 400. It's definitely under 500.
It's
Okay.
a Zoom.
Do we have anything else that could possibly be coming in that we won't be able to do if we fund this?
It's all up to us, Dorianne. That's something that Vanessa from time to time will send me something. It's for this board to look at what's out there. She gives an assist, and then we have to get people signed up for it. And my sense is this year with everything with COVID, it's not a normal year. I sent out an email personally to all the board chairs, and I think actually Ms. Landry was one of two who responded to me about taking a performance evaluation class. So while you're here, Marguerite, thank you for that. Didn't get a huge response. So I don't know. We're gonna have more coming up for the SAP. I think I would favor, it's not 50% or 75% of our budget. We still will have funds left over. I would support Dorian if you wanted to make a motion.
Okay.
Either way, if the board wants to reconsider what's going to happen with other employee development or vote on it now, I could go either way.
Okay, Barry, did you want to say something before I make a motion?
No, I'd be in
Okay.
favor of voting now.
Okay, okay, I'll make a motion that we fund the, what's it called? The MCPPO certification program for Ryan Donovan, our library director, for the amount of $885 coming out of our employee development fund.
Thank you, Ms.
Line item.
Jazinski.
Budget, I don't know what it's called.
Is there a second to the motion?
Yep.
Okay, all votes will be roll call. Mr. Dietz,
Approved, yes.
Ms. Jazinski,
Yes,
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes,
and the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're on 4B, library requests. A and B, we have 2 requests from the library. One is for a promotional pay raise for Kim Ivers, Assistant Director. This is Section 8A of the bylaw, and it's page 18 in your packet. So if you look at 8A, as we've interpreted in the past, or at least I've interpreted in the past, and we've done some of these promotions at the library, 8A speaks to an employee who's promoted to a higher pay grade, comes in at the rate requested by the department head with the approval of this board. So you have on page 18 a proposal from Mr. Donovan. I don't know, Ms. Landry or Mr. Donovan, if you want to tell the board anything about this promotion before they vote on your request, you have the floor.
Ryan, I'll defer to you. How's that?
Sure. So, since the flood a couple years ago, Kim Ivers has taken on additional administrative responsibilities. She really went above and beyond, in my opinion, with the amount of work I think she took on. That only sort of, I would say, increased as a result of COVID. There were times in April and May where her and I were, working in the building to help maintain it, just the two of us. We have, I think, gotten to a good place working together. I really have nothing negative to say about her work performance. She has just been incredible, I would say, and has helped me sort of navigate and organize the library in really uncertain times. So I think that this is a positive step in the right direction. A lot of people have asked, and we had a lot of discussions with this with the Board of Library Trustees, is would this take away from her children's responsibilities? It will not. She will maintain doing children's programming. This is really reflective more of some of the meeting room administration. When we had designed the assistant director position a couple of years ago, we had really looked at it as a hybrid position. Originally, that was going to be teen librarian and assistant director, but we're sort of pivoting a little, and it's going to be children's librarian and assistant director. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think there was very little discussion when the promotion was proposed, because I think the library trustees also understand and know how hard Kim has worked in the last year.
The other part I'd add is that because one library employee has moved away from town, the amount of salary increase that this will involve doesn't require our salary line to increase.
Thank you both. And just to square this off, looking at your request, the salary request that you're requesting is how much of an increase percentage-wise?
4%.
4%, okay. And I would remind the board, perhaps you don't need reminding, that in the past we have had a policy of giving a 4% raise when an employee is reclassified. So this is consistent with what we've had before. This goes back to a discussion. I don't know if Mr. Dietz was present. I was, before some of the other members were on the board, with the aforementioned consultant about what is appropriate in the field when an employee is promoted up a grade. And if the budget can handle it, 4%. It's an unwritten policy of this board, at least since 2017. Since I've been on the board, that 4%, if the department budget can handle it, is appropriate. The range that was given to us by GovHR was 3 to 5 in the board. Unofficially, I don't think we ever put it in writing, 4%. So this is in line with that. And the salary request is in the range. I don't see an issue with it under 8A. Anybody else have some comments before we vote?
I have some. I feel like the bad cop today. Why are we giving somebody a raise when the library has been closed for the past year? In fact, it's still closed. I'm just not understanding why we're doing this now.
Well, actually, it's not closed. It's working to provide a huge amount of online services to the town, as you probably are getting that part, which is our intensive. And the other thing is that there's curbside service. If you want to get a series of books out of the library, you call or email, talk, and order what you want, and they bring it to you, bring it to your car, basically. And that is time consuming, and our people are busy.
Okay. Nope, that's fine. It's just the building itself is closed. So that I'm just asking, like I said,
Yeah, we highly
I'm being the bad cop.
nobody is sadder about that than we are.
Okay. So another question I have is, so we're going to promote Kim to the assistant library director, and Ryan just said that she's going to maintain doing the children's position as well and doing that job, correct?
Yes.
So are you planning in the future to then replace her as the children's librarian? So you're going to bring another person on board?
No. Our hope is that I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit with the third request from the library, but we are hoping to, through attrition or a future retirement, hire a teen librarian as a separate role. So this is sort of long-term, this is part of the long-term staffing plan.
So the job description for Kim will be an assistant library director, but in that description, it's also going to include the responsibility she now holds as the children's librarian.
That's correct.
Sorry, I don't know why that's connected.
That's correct. So when we had designed the assistant library director role, we had looked at it as fusion between already a youth services position between teen librarian and having the assistant director responsibilities. So this is just, instead of having it be assistant director with teen responsibilities, it's assistant director with children's responsibilities.
Okay, and this is not going to increase your salary line item in your budget?
Correct. Not for the coming year.
So Kim will get a slight raise, but we have a part-time staff member who has, her last day is Thursday. So we are not going to hire a new person in that position.
And what position is that, Ryan?
It's library technician.
Okay.
So the amount of money for that employee equals, it's a little bit higher than what Kim is going to get.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it. That's it for bad cop.
No, you're just asking questions. So as I interpret section 8A, and again, there's been a lot of confusion about various provisions of the SAP. I don't think that this board has authority to thumbs up or thumbs down a promotion. It looks to be on the face of 8A that the department or whoever the responsible authority is, if it were Mr. Purple, if it weren't an elected board, that whole thing, whoever the authority is decides the promotion and then comes to us and says, this is where I want to set the pay. So we're not actually approving a promotion. We're approving the pay raise. So the question is, Kim has been promoted by the supervisory authority, by the library board of trustees. Do we think this is an appropriate salary? And so I give you the feedback that this is in line with other promotional pay raises when someone gets reclassified. And again, this position, she's going from grade 5 to grade 6. So I think the only inquiry for this board is it an appropriate raise? Not is it an appropriate promotion? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Mark wants to say something.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just have one clarification. I want to make sure I heard this correctly. So I think the one thing that you've always asked too is, is there funding available for this? Which you did. And so if I heard correctly, there is funding available in this fiscal year. There is a position, a part-time position that is not going to be filled moving forward. So it's not going to have a detrimental effect on the FY22 budget as planned. Is that correct?
My understanding, I guess I wouldn't characterize, I understand what you mean by detrimental. I basically asked, does this have a budget effect? And my understanding from what Mr. Donovan has said is this is not going to cost the taxpayers.
And detrimental is the wrong word. I apologize for that.
No,
but essentially,
effect.
Is it going to have a negative impact? In other words, I think Ms. Jasinski in her bad cop role had asked the question about is there funding available? Well, obviously, I think with the library not being open to the public physically and everything in that, there are some savings I think that, probably have been gained, with maybe the page positions in that this year. So yes, there is going to be some capacity this year. I just want to make sure that next year when we come back, and people start coming back and performing everything full time, or in the capacity they weren't getting paid for it, that we're not creating a position that it was okay last year, but moving forward, it is going to cost us more money.
And that's a good point, Mark. I have actively been working with the trustees on a revised budget. It looks like our bottom line is going to be the same as it was during the budget submission a couple months ago. So I think you'll see the same number and the same percent increase, but you're not going to see us asking for more money specifically for this. The employee who's departing only works 6 hours. A week. So that is that's pretty small, I would say. That's pretty much the least an employee works when they're hired here. So this isn't going to have a detrimental effect, we feel, moving forward.
No, I appreciate that, Ryan. And just remember, this is also taped, so I can go back to this if we need to later.
I just had a quick question.
So Brian, sorry, not Brian. Brian. What is the bottom line cost to your budget of this 4% increase for Kim's salary?
I don't have the exact number right in front of me. I apologize. I know it's less than $3,000.
Yeah, I thought it was 2,800 and.
All right, so she's currently getting $3,368. And what's my multiplier for annual salary? 2,080?
Yes.
Yeah.
Times 2,080. Her current salary is 70,054. Does that sound right?
That sounds correct.
3,368 times 2080. She's making 70,000 a year, and you're going to multiply that by 1.04, and she's going to make 72,856.
That sounds correct.
All right. So this discussion is about exactly what Marguerite said, $2,800.
The average raise 4%.
What?
The average raise 4%.
The raise is for reclassification. She's going from grade 5 to grade 6.
I know. I'm just asking if the average is generally 4%.
What average?
When we're moving people from different ranges.
Yes, that's been the policy of the board since 2017, 4%. Yep.
All right, so we need to make a motion, Betsy, to approve the increase.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. The chair makes a motion to approve a promotional pay increase for Kimberly Ivers from children's librarian, Schedule A, Grade 5, to assistant library director, Schedule A, Grade 6, from a current hourly rate of $33.68 to a new hourly rate of $35.03. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Oh, and it would be effective today. Effective today. Add that to the motion. All right, we have a second. This will be by roll call. Mr. Dietz.
Affirmative.
Ms. Jazinski.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
And Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. Mazel tov and congratulations to Ms. Kim. I know she works hard. Related question for Marguerite or Brian. I keep saying Brian or Ryan, if you know. You have been providing books to people outside during the pandemic. What is the demand for books from pre-COVID to COVID, the traffic? Any stats on that? Are people borrowing as much? I think I'm actually borrowing more because I'm home and I'm reading more. Do you have any kind of stats on your service levels? From not even talking about your online programming, just the service levels of the book borrowings.
So that's pretty consistent with what it was pre-COVID. I think the borrowing for curbside is down a little bit, if I have to be honest, but it's not, I would say not significantly, not statistically significant. It's fairly even with prior years. The online book circulation has more than doubled. So
you are in COVID at 11 months with circulation levels of books and book borrowings and happenings, not programming, that's a separate issue. Just the book borrowing, you're pretty much at a level that you were pre-COVID.
correct.
And that's what your staff is processing. Okay, good to know. Thank you. I just have my personal experience. So, all right. Thank you all. And again, congratulations from this board to Kim Ivers.
Thank you.
Move on to 4B, subsection B. Request. Oh, that was done wrong. Nobody noticed that on the agenda. The little A and B should be a 1 and a 2. I apologize. So under B, library request, we are on the second library request. And this is for a request for establishment of a new position of teen librarian. This falls under section 3 of the bylaw. And there is a request, a job description in your packet at page 19. And there was also a supplemental memo that came on Monday morning, and that is in the packet at 42 and 43. So, library representatives, you have the floor for this request.
Again, we're requesting that this job description go into the SAP, even though we have no intention of hiring that person yet. We just would like it there in the event that, we figure we will hire a person with this capacity at some point in the future, maybe not so far future, but we would like the job description in the SAP just as a matter of forward thinking housekeeping. And I'll turn it over to Ryan at this point.
Thank you. Ryan, you have the floor.
So, the plan really was we have two full-time professional librarians who work at your library. We wanted to have 3. That was part of the idea behind creating the assistant library director position. We also have a brand new teen room that has a desk and needs to be staffed. So our hope was that the assistant director would be able to come in and be a new assistant director, but also provide teen services. From the previous thing you just approved that we're kind of shifting that a little bit. So we want to have the capacity to hire a teen librarian in the future as the third professional librarian position. We would not, I'm looking at Mark right now, we would not be increasing the number of full-time people at the library to more than 6. This would be the 6th person at the library. So right now we have 4 full-time paraprofessional positions. We would turn one of the paraprofessional positions into this teen librarian job.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Open it up to board members for comments? Or anybody?
Want a bad cop again?
Well, only if you want to label yourself as such.
Well, I feel like I am today because I'm questioning everything. I don't
That
believe
doesn't make you a bad cop in my mind. That makes you a good board member who's aware of their dual role of, taxpayers and employees. We
Thank you.
balance both. So you have the floor, Ms. Jasinski.
My belief is we should not be adding SAP positions to the SAP. They're not critical, that we don't need right now, that we have no intention of hiring immediately. It's fine that there's a job description, but I don't believe that we should be adding that today until that is a critical position that has to be filled. January 13th, Ryan Donovan told us, and it's in our minutes, that that the library would not seek to add the position for the next year. So we're over a year away, F22. If they want to add this, I would say come back to us next year and have it added for then, but I don't think we should be adding it. Once we add it to the SAP, they get to add the position. And it's my opinion, we should not be doing that just haphazardly. That's just my opinion. I'm very concerned about adding another position to the library that they don't have any intention of filling right now.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. Other members of the board comment?
Is it your intention to fill this position when the library reopens?
No, it will happen when there's the attrition or retirement or departure of another full-time staff member.
Okay, and then to Dorian's point, is there any urgency to getting this approved by this board now, as opposed to closer in time to when you're going to need to fill the position?
Well, I mean, other than depending on the time frame for when somebody would let me know if they're going to retire, I don't know that I'm going to know exactly when this will come up. We functioned with 5 full-time people when we were waiting to hire the assistant library director a couple years ago. And that was very difficult, I would say, for myself and for the staff here. So really what I'm trying to do is sort of have it in place so that we're ready to go when the time comes up. You know, I don't anticipate we're going to have a full-time departure in the next year or even 2 years, but I don't want to put myself in the position where we can't hire somebody because the position doesn't exist in the SAP.
Could I ask for a clarification here?
Certainly. Go ahead.
Okay, great. If one of the library full-time staff retires, and we do think that a person who can handle the teen room is a good next hire there, because the teens are an underserved population and there's not enough to draw them in. Does the town meeting have to approve the creation of this job description before we can hire the person?
Yes.
So in other words, if suddenly for some reason a full-time person left, we wouldn't be able to hire a teen person until at least 2023, after the town meeting had okayed the job description.
2022.
Okay.
So the way that it works is, at least my interpretation,
All right.
since I've been a member of the board since September 2017, requests are made to the personnel board. We thumbs up or we thumbs down.
Yep.
If we say, yes, we want to recommend this, it goes into the SAP to town meeting. But town meeting is the legislature. It's their bylaw. I stand up. I think this will be my 4th year. I say, this is what the personnel board approved, but they would be free to pick and choose. Say we were proposing 3 new positions in the SAP. Town meeting could say we like 1, throw out 2, any combination, throw them all out. Everything I get up and recommend, and present the recommendations of the full board is subject to town meeting approval.
Okay, so that makes sense. So in other words, we couldn't hire this position until it had passed town meeting.
So where we were at in January, Marguerite, is I had a discussion with Ryan and I told him for a number of reasons I didn't favor bringing this forward to town meeting for
Mhm.
FY22.
Yes, I'm familiar with that and I understand your point of view. Yep.
And then we got extended. We were told we had an additional 2 months. Town meeting will be May or June. So the job will be effective the same, whether we met in town meeting in March of 2021 or May or June. It would take effect July. So if this position were approved, you would have an open position as of July 1st. If the
you approve
board
it today-
delays you
yeah.
and says, no, we're going to consider this for town meeting next year, you would be eligible, if it passes, to hire someone July 1st, 2022.
2022. Okay.
FY23, but calendar year 22. And I don't know if any other board members have questions, comments.
Madam Chair, I just have one comment. I would ask that the board treat this the same as you treated the deputy fire chief position. If you remember when that came to you, Chief Achilles had said he wanted the board to consider putting this in place, even though he had no intention of funding it for the upcoming year. And the board took the information and took it under advisement and said, we'll address it when you're ready, when you're ready to fund it. So
I
if
believe that was
libraries-
Chief Morrow, right, Mr. Purple? January 2018.
Chief Achilles. It was Chief Achilles.
It was Chief, yeah, I believe it was Chief Achilles that brought it forward. I know there were discussions under Chief Morrow, but I think it formally came to you under Chief Achilles.
It came to
I
us
would-
under Chief Morrow originally.
If there's no intention, which is what I'm hearing, to hire this for 22, then really I don't know that you want to basically put something in place where there's been no discussion of the position, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the position of the board last time was that, we don't want to say yes to a position that, that we have no idea, if there's going to be funding, if, there's a lot of other pieces to it beyond you simply adding it into the SAP.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Purple. I think there's a correction there. So in the December 2017, I believe January 2018 timeframe, you came to us with then Fire Chief Morrow with a job description for a deputy fire chief and a request to consider that position for the SAP. And I can go back and check those minutes. I believe that was the time frame. And there was a request to accept the job description, even if we didn't put it into the SAP. And I remember discussing this because I was new to the board with Ms. Henry, who was then alternating as chair. She was vice chair, Russ Milholland was chair. They would switch on and off. And my feeling, and I believe Ms. Henry's feeling as reflected in the minutes, was we did not believe, exactly as you said, we did not believe it was appropriate to put a job into the SAP unless the need was critical, meaning you were planning to hire. And I believe you in that the level of scrutiny. I believe that Chief Achilles reintroduced the idea, but ended up pulling the request for budget reasons. So you are correct. Just wanted to correct. I think this goes back even further.
So I'll defer to you on the details in that, but we're in the same place.
Yes.
Okay, so
And I didn't want to, excuse me, I didn't want to comment because I can often be, the loudest voice in the room because I'm looking at the minutes and I've been here the longest and just my nature. But yes, I wanted to say to the board that I still am inclined that I remember asking Chief Morrow, not knowing him well and being new to the board and not wanting to be disrespectful. Please explain to me how the sky will fall if we don't approve this position. Because I felt at the time that in my role of balancing, deference to the departments and the taxpayers, I felt it was important to understand the critical need for a position before we put it in the SAP. And I still think that is the right standard.
okay,
And I feel that I understand, and the reason this is on the agenda today is because Mr. Donovan has persuaded me that part of the library's job and the library trustees, they file a 5-year strategic plan. And they want to plan ahead. This is their mission under state law and practice of libraries, is they have to file a 5-year plan, and this is part of their 5-year plan. And I brought this forward so the board could have a full and fair discussion, but my personal feeling is the same as it was when the fire chief came to us, whatever year it was and whatever fire chief it was. Mark, I agree with you. I believe that we should vote to put positions into the SAP that this board has been convinced are critical and essential now. And I don't see what has changed from January to today, other than the fact that we have a couple more months on our SAP deadline. I thought I was in a place with Mr. Donovan where we agreed that the optics of asking the town to add a teen library position were not very good in a year such as the past year that we've had, and that the trustees were willing to wait. And the only thing that's changed is we got an extension of our homework from the moderator and the Board of Selectmen because they're delaying town meeting. But my standard hasn't changed. So that's my feeling. And I would support looking at this position more seriously when they've had a departure and they're ready to hire. And I understand that's problematic for the library, but that's my view. So.
Well, listen, Betsy, thank you. I'll take that back to the rest of the trustees. And I certainly see your point that it's sort of constructing something before it's actually going to exist. Maybe works for the department's planning, but maybe not for the real needs in real time when the time comes.
The view of this board, you're the library board, you have your own perspective. This board has a little different one. We need to be, the two buzzwords I always my guiding principles on this board are fairness and transparency. But with Zoom and YouTube, we have no choice but to be transparent.
It's
Great,
really
that's
hard,
handled.
So
In fairness, and Mark hit the nail on the head and did it much more succinctly. We told another department head, you can't, in another place and time, you can't have that position until you show us a critical need and you're ready to hire it. That said, we have different board members now. Mr. Nixon isn't here. Mr. Rubenstein was not part of that discussion. He may want to steer the board in another direction. He may think it's an excellent idea to facilitate departmental planning. And that's something, if we changed it, then we would change it. And we would have to tell the next fire chief who comes to us for a position, we would judge it under a different standard. So I know Mr. Rubenstein, Mr. Dietz, Mr. Dietz, you may have been part of that discussion about the fire chief. I think you were.
I think I will report back to the board, and I'm going to ask your advice on this. Would you prefer that we withdraw this request, or would you prefer to vote it down?
That's up to you. We vote on what comes before us. If you want to withdraw a request, feel free to withdraw a request.
All right, Ryan, what are your feelings on that?
We can table it till your next board meeting and you can report back to me in March.
All right,
I just have one comment, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I think the person on board a number of times has had to review departmental requests for positions, and then they've had to tell the department that the position doesn't exist in the SAP. What I'm trying to do here is, we know we eventually want to hire this person. We would like the foundation, the framework, in order to make that happen when it's time. I understand how everyone feels about this, and I respect the comments that you've given. I don't want to be 2 steps behind. I want to be able to do this when we're ready. And it's gonna, I don't know that the time frame of town meeting and the SAP always meshes with when you're ready to hire someone.
It doesn't.
That's all I want to say. But
you're absolutely right, Ryan. It doesn't. And there are many times sitting on this board that the municipal calendar has screwed us up. It just doesn't, with money, with salaries, with reviews. You know, you've listened to a lot of our meetings. Mr. Dietz has some real common sense approaches to how to handle personnel. And then we have to butt up against the wall of the public sector. It is what it is. Unless this board wants to change its tack and say, hey, I could be wrong. Dorian could be wrong. So what I need is it could happen, Dorian. Someone could change our thinking, but a majority of this board would have to be open to considering positions for planning purposes. I'm not hearing that today. I don't see anyone I hear two people saying that they feel our obligation to the taxpayers and our mission requires us to wait until you're ready to hire. I don't hear anybody arguing against that position.
I would be more sympathetic to it if you came and said, look, it's very likely we're going to need someone in that position in the next year. But the fact that, and I understand why, but the fact that you really can't say anything about when that might be, I'm just inclined to go with the precedent that's been established at this point.
So do you need a motion, Betsy, or are we just tabling this till March?
I'm waiting for the trustees to tell me if they want to withdraw it.
The trustees are in session, Betsy, so
Okay.
I think you guys need to make a decision. I would just say, and thank you, Barry, for what you said. I don't think coming back in March would change anything.
No, Ryan, you misunderstood. Marguerite had asked a procedural question and she's correct. It's up for the library trustees to pull this or not pull this.
I'm going to say we're going to withdraw it. Because
Okay, I can take, and what I'm suggesting, Marguerite, because sorry to interrupt, but you obviously want to discuss this with your board. I'm going to table this matter and you can report back to me anytime up until I do my agenda I'll be doing my agenda for March 10th. I'll be filing it, close of business on March 4th. You
Okay,
let
that's
me know.
Yeah, we'll talk about it and we'll see what everyone thinks about it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think your options are to withdraw it for this year, or if you want to mount an argument to try to persuade the board and Mr. Nixon may be present with us, we can consider that as well. You let me know what the trustees want to do.
I think I'll speak for them right now, just sort of across the board. Can we table it until March?
Absolutely. That's what I'm recommending. We are tabled till March. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to unfinished business, personnel bylaw. Mr. Purple advised me he has some very important business this afternoon related to our vaccination clinic for seniors, 75 and up. I can't think of anything more important facing the town. I'm sure you've got a few things on your plate. So I welcome you. Mr. Purple has to cut out in about 10, 15 minutes. If there was any aspect of the personnel bylaw revisions that you felt strongly about, I would be happy to skip to the area that you'd like to talk about.
I don't think there's anything that either, I feel strongly about that you're looking to bring forward, or quite honestly, that Ms. Hill can't speak to as well as, if not better than I can.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Purple. And thanks for whatever you're doing to facilitate the vaccination of the seniors. If anybody wants to know more about the vaccine clinics, it's 75 and up. There's an email that Vanessa sent out. You should have gotten it. And also it's reported on my Southborough. So that's just a little public health plug. Thank you, Mr. Purple. All right. So we are on packet page 20. I've combined everything we've been discussing over the last few months into one document. I hope this format works for you. The red and green coding system is gone. It just got a little too confusing because at our last meeting, we didn't have anyway. We have a new system now and it's one marked up copy. So starting on page 1, I'll just ask if the board has any discussion on any of the points. So all the changes are highlighted in red. All right, page 1, strike the definition of anniversary date in its entirety. All right. Now we can do it one of two ways. We can have a motion on each one of these and then you won't ever see it again. Or we can just go through the whole thing and vote everything that's in here. I don't know how you want to do it. In the past, we voted on each one. Because then if there's discussion, then we at least have a list of what we voted. Does anyone have a strong feeling about how they want to proceed? No. All right, so I'm going to recommend that we just vote these one by one and then we'll be done. All right. Chair makes a motion. Personnel Board, delete the definition of anniversary date on page 1, section 1, definitions.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Mr. Dietz.
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
yes,
Chair votes in the affirmative. All right.
20 pages.
All right.
Page 2. We have a proposal. The chair makes a motion that we approve adding a definition of start date to read. Start date means the first day of employment with the town. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dietz.
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
yes,
Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. All right, page 3. We have a proposal to delete section 5, job descriptions. And this is my motion. If you look at section and replace it with the language in the packet. So the problem with this section, and this is, I don't think this is something we've discussed. When I went through the SAP, putting in everything else, if you look at the current section 5, it says, Personnel Board shall maintain written job descriptions of the position classes in the classification schedule, each consisting of a statement describing the essential nature of the work required of such classes. Oh, I know how this came up. This came up because of the second sentence. And Vanessa, you may have mentioned this. Mark or Vanessa, I think, asked us to clarify in the current section. It says, it goes on to say, each department head shall be required to retain current job descriptions and to submit any revisions to the Personnel Board. And Vanessa and or Mark had posited, does this board want to retain job descriptions like in a file cabinet? Or do we want to actually have a role in approving them? And I think the practice has been during my tenure, we actually approve them. But when I looked at section 1, I realized Personnel Board during my tenure has not maintained written job descriptions for each of the classes. That's not something we do. What we have is the consultant's JAQ scoring tool, and we have criteria for what's a grade 1, what's a grade 2, what's a grade 3. So I propose that we scratch section 5 and update it in 2 respects. One, it will now say the Personnel Board maintains criteria that it believes are appropriate for the positions and classes. And those would be the consultant's JAQ and scoring tool. And then it does say that each department or body with SAP employees still has to have current job descriptions, but they must be submitted to us for our approval. So it would clarify 2 things. And I open it up for comments, questions.
So in your motion, do you want to read what you want to change it to, Betsy?
If nobody has a comment, Mark or Vanessa, I don't think I heard from you. Does this work for you? Does this seem consistent with where we're at? I just wanted to check with our administrators.
Muted.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll let Vanessa speak to that, but I think it does.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You know, it clarifies something that's been a little bit confusing in the past. Well, which board do you go to first and so forth? So we like the way this is rewritten.
all right. The chair moves that the Personnel Board delete section 5 job descriptions and put in its place the following language. The Personnel Board shall maintain such criteria as it deems appropriate for the positions and classes in the schedules, period. Each department or public body, parens, board, committee, commission, and parens, with SAP employees shall maintain current job descriptions for such employees. All such job descriptions and any revisions thereto must be submitted to the Personnel Board for approval, following review and approval by the Board of Selectmen or appropriate public body. The criteria for any class shall not be deemed to limit the duties or responsibilities of any position as set forth in the job description, comma, nor to affect in any way the power of any administrative authority to appoint, comma, to assign duties to, comma, or to direct and control the work of any employee under the jurisdiction of such authority, period. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
This will be by roll call. Mr. Dietz.
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
yes,
Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. It is approved. All right, page 4, section 7. All the way down at the bottom under section D, probationary employees. Under subsection 2, it currently reads, during the probationary period, paid leave accruals shall be based on the original hire date period. So this is part and parcel of taking out the definition of hire date and looking at all the places, anniversary date, looking at all the places hiring date might appear.
We make,
And when I ran a search, I found this hire date reference. We do not define hire date. In many discussions the board has had, we've decided that hire date and start date are different. Hire date could be June 1st, employee takes a vacation, we've all agreed, the important date is the start date. So all I'm proposing is scratch hire date and add start date.
we just make a motion to do that for the rest of the document instead of going through each one, just saying any.
In drafting the bylaw, I think it's appropriate, Jay, to go through. I don't even know if it's anywhere else. There may be one other one.
Yeah, we should.
Because then it could say hiring, the language could be different. The short answer is no. I prefer to look at these all. And then when I give Lori the SAP to type, I know that the board has approved each and every instance. So that's how I'd like to proceed. So chair makes a motion to amend section 7D2 to read, delete the words original hire date, substitute in their place the word start date. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Mr. Dietz.
Yes,
Ms. Jazinski.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
yes,
Chair, yes. Thank you. Section 8, we're on page 24. This was a recommendation of Ms. Hale and Mr. Purple to clarify 8A. Do we have any discussion on this? Our administrators thought that the language might be redundant from section 1 to section 2.
It reads fine to me.
fine with it.
yeah,
All right. Make a motion that the board strike section 8A of the SAP and substitute in its place the following language. An employee who is promoted to a job with a higher range or rate of pay shall enter it at the rate recommended by the department head with the approval of the personnel board, comma, provided the maximum for the job is not exceeded. This is contingent upon the department head's recommendation that qualifications and performance warrant it.
Second.
I do have an issue. The board has authority to go above the maximum in the interests of the SAP. I think we have a general exceptions clause. And we currently have an employee who makes more than the maximum of their range.
I think this is for going forward, Betsy, not referring to someone that's already in employment. With that,
No,
no?
this says that with a promotion, somebody could not exceed the maximum for their job, but I believe this board retains the authority. If we don't, then we have to go cut an employee's salary tomorrow.
but doesn't the current language say the same thing? Provided.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, that's a problem. All right, well, we're going to take that up, employees who exceed range at our next meeting, because that's on the agenda. That's under discussion with that department.
Do you
All
want
right.
to just strike that portion?
No, point taken. It's in the language. This is an attempt simply to clarify existing language and make it clearer. So if everybody, you're absolutely right. That was a good point. It says what it says there.
Okay.
All right.
So
So
we'll just hold that section for the next meeting.
no, I don't think so. I think it says what the current section says, but you've done what you wanted to do and what we asked for. More graceful language that clarifies it. So this whole
Okay.
issue of employees beyond range will be dealt with separately. I don't want to hold up the SAP.
Okay.
Okay, so chair makes a motion to delete section 8A and substitute the following language. An employee who is promoted to a job with a higher range or rate of pay shall enter it at the rate recommended by the department head with the approval of the personnel board, comma, provided the maximum for the job is not exceeded. This is contingent upon the department head's recommendation that qualifications and performance warrant it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Dietz votes yes. Ms. Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you to Mr. Purple and Ms. Hale. And Mr. Purple has left the meeting. We can still see him. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. All right. This is section 11, employee benefits. This is the one that required a lot of work. So if we get through this, I'll consider it a job well done. Maybe we could just take section 11, first two paragraphs. We've already discussed this. Anybody have any comments about the changes to the first two paragraphs?
Nope.
Okay, so chair makes a motion that the board revise section 11 to add the following sentence to the first paragraph. The benefits set forth in this section are applicable to full-time employees only, comma, except where noted. And to revise the second paragraph to strike the words the SAP and may represent. So the first sentence reads, all forms of paid leave set forth in this section are based on a 40-hour work week. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Chair approves. Great. Okay, section 11A. We're just going to change, we're going to strike each eligible, and it's going to read full-time. This is just conforming the language of each of these sections. And then in the paragraph that starts to be eligible for holiday pay, we're going to take away the capital letter on employee and just conform it and make it employee with a little e. All right, chair makes a motion for the changes in section A. Strike each eligible, add full-time employee, and make employee. I don't even think we need a motion on lowercase e. We'll conform it. Second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenblum? It is approved. All right, any comments about the section B? This is something we discussed at the last meeting. All right, chair makes a motion to amend section B, vacations with pay. Strike the word regular. Take out the table, add in the new schedule as presented in the packet on page 26. And subsection 2, strike the words in another municipality or similar government agency. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Dietz? Mr. Dietz, oh, you have to say it, Jay, on the record.
I did. You just didn't hear it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Ms.
Yes.
Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Chair approves. It is done. All right, section 11C. Strike all regular. And that's it. And fix the capital letter on employees. Motion? Second?
Second.
Approve. Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Chair approves. All right, personal days, section D, strike each, add full-time employees, strike date of hire, substitute start date. Do I have a motion?
Are you making the motions?
Yeah, I made a motion to do the
Second.
thing I just said.
Okay, second.
All right, Mr. Dietz,
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
All right.
Chair?
Let me just ask you, does anybody have any questions with any of these? I can take the rest of the sections as a whole. I just thought we might be having separate discussions. Does
Chair, you
anybody
have to
have a
vote.
problem with anything I've done on 28 or 29?
No, Chair, you have to vote on the last motion. You didn't vote.
Oh, approved.
Okay.
In the affirmative. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if nobody has any separate comments,
No, let's do it
I
all as
do.
a whole.
oh, all
I
right.
do on 28 on miscellaneous paid time off.
All right. So let's just approve section F, add the word full-time to section F. I make a motion that we add full-time to section F.
Second,
All right.
Yes,
Mr. Dietz,
yes,
Ms. Jazinski,
yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes.
and chair votes in the affirmative. All right, let's talk about section G, miscellaneous time off.
So I see what we're trying to do. My concern is we're going to end up treating SAP employees worse than the other town employees. Having checked with Vanessa on the union contracts, the 4 union contracts all provide for something like domestic partner or any other person deemed to be closely associated. So all of them do provide bereavement leave for someone who doesn't have a familial relationship with the employee. And I just don't think in this particular circumstance we should be treating SAP employees worse than unionized employees.
Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein. I was not aware of this. This has been in the packet for a week. It was sent and I was not alerted to the fact. I had no idea that persons residing with the employee was meant to cover domestic partners. I was like, I thought that was 50 years old and it was roommates. I had no clue and no one brought that to my attention. So thank you.
I just found out this morning, so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So if we're all good, I totally agree with your reasoning. Should be consistent and I'll leave it back in. So the only 2 changes would be first paragraph where we list sections 1 to 3 are applicable to full-time. And the other change would be if out-of-state travel is required, the town administrator or the delegatee, that would be the ATA, I don't think they should approve it. It should be the department head. I don't know why it would rise to the level. And you also have the issue of if it's the library or the Board of Health or an elected board, why would the town administrator or someone they delegate be able to tell the employee of an elected board whether they could have a couple days travel time for a funeral? So, Vanessa, is that a problem for you if it
No, I
defaults to
think
the
that's
department?
fine. The
The other
department
reason-
head knows better, the conditions that might occur, and so I agree with that.
Thanks. And that makes it consistent in that department heads approve vacation time anyway.
Right.
So this is personal time. Okay, so the chair will make the motion to add the following language to section 11G. After the first sentence, add sections 1 to 3 are applicable to full-time employees only, semicolon. Section 4 is applicable to both full-time and part-time employees. And in subsection 1, in the sentence that starts, if out-of-state travel is required, strike the town administrator or his or her delegatee and insert the department head. Second?
Second,
Betsy, there's one other small change in 4.
Oh, yes. Add to my motion and or. Add the word or.
okay.
Thanks.
Second,
Thank you, Barry. Mr. Dietz?
yes,
All right. Ms. Jazinski?
yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. And then is there any comment on the changes to H and I? I will take those together. All right. Chair makes a motion that the board amend section 11H to add the following sentence to the end. This section applies to all employees, comma, both full-time and part-time period. Full-time employees will be entitled to overtime pay, and part-time employees will be entitled to compensation at their normal rate of pay, comma, since part-time employees do not receive overtime pay. And on section J, add the following language at the end of the paragraph. For full-time employees, period. Do I have a second?
Should we say full-time employees only?
Starters and plan for full. You wanted to say only?
I think you need to say only in there.
All
know
right,
you're
I
saying
will
it might
amend
be a
my
little
motion
bit-
to say for full-time employees only.
I got a question on this though.
Yes, Jane.
So if full-time employees, they're gonna get time and a half for court pay, right? Would they have gotten time and a half regardless if they didn't have court pay?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
So we're gonna give them, so they're gonna get court time, they're gonna get time and a half for court time, right?
Overtime, yes.
Right. Would they have gotten overtime if it was not court time? Because they're a full-time employee, right? That's their salary.
I guess I don't understand the question.
Full-time employees, doesn't matter if they work,
I can't hear you very well. It sounds like you're over a telegraph wire. I guess maybe that's me. Okay, I'll listen carefully. Go ahead.
full-time employees, regardless of how many hours they work, whether it be 30 hours a week or 70 hours a week, get the same amount of pay, right? Because they're full-time non-exempt employees. So why are we giving them time and a half for doing court time when they're getting their regular annual salary?
Oh, I understand what you're saying, except that's not how it works in Southborough. That's how it works in the private sector. If you're a salaried exempt employee making 70 grand a year and your boss needs you to go spend half a day in court, you absorb that because you don't have a set number of hours.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is they're actually not at work. Their job at that time is going to court. So they shouldn't get paid more for actually not coming to work and going to court.
Well, there's no such thing in the private sector as overtime pay for a exempt employee, but there is in Southborough, right, guys? Yes, Vanessa.
I think the only case where the overtime might be provided here, and Brian can correct me if he has another example, is potentially, maybe our full-time facilities employees, it would be unusual for them to have to go to court for any reason to begin with, but if they did, they would get their normal 40, they're working their normal 40 hours, which might be spread out on occasion, on a Saturday or a Sunday if they're doing a special project in one of our buildings. But I can't imagine any other employees going to court that aren't already working Monday to Friday. Brian, do you have any additional comment?
No, I agree. It would almost always be Monday through Friday, I would think. I've never seen this used, by the way. Have you? I've never seen it. I've never seen anyone do this.
I guess,
Interesting.
I guess like you, I'm a little confused. So as I read it, it says, if you're a 40-hour-a-week employee and you go to court, and because of that court appearance, you end up spending 45 hours, you're going to get 5 hours of overtime pay. But if you still only spend 40 hours, including the court time, you're not getting any overtime pay.
Right.
So I guess I'm not seeing what the issue is.
I think I see the issue, Jay. So let me ask this question to Brian and Vanessa. Do we have full-time employees, 40-hour-a-week employees who are non-exempt? i.e. they get paid overtime. Am I using that term correctly? Exempt, you don't get overtime.
Occasion, yes.
Non-exempt, you do.
Right.
Do we
Right,
have 40-hour-a-week
yes.
employees? Let's take Lori Esposito, 40 hours a week?
Right.
She's non-exempt.
Yep.
Okay. She cannot work overtime. She's subject to overtime rules. She can't just work more than 40 hours without consequences, correct?
Without authorization, right?
Okay, so she would be one example. She's worked her 40 hours and her bosses require her to go to court for 8 hours. She would get overtime. However, what Jay is highlighting is we have a professional class of employees. Sorry, not to suggest Lori's not professional. Let's take Brian. Brian, you don't have a set number of hours. You work what the job requires.
Right.
You are exempt from overtime. If you had to go to court for a day, you have to pay for it.
Too bad.
Well.
So we didn't
Too bad.
distinguish
So sad.
between exempt and non-exempt.
Right.
Is that what you're saying, Mr. Dietz?
That's my question, is because a 40-hour exempt employee, it doesn't matter if they work 80 hours in a week or 20 hours in a week.
Okay,
They
that's a
just-
great point. I'm going to table this.
They're not overtime eligible.
All right.
This does not explain that. That just says full-time employees, which could be any.
Okay, we're going to lose Jay in a minute. So Jay, thank you for this point. I think this needs to be further broken out between exempt and non-exempt employees. Does that make sense?
You can bang the rest of this out. I can push my meeting off for another 3 minutes.
All right, I'm going to table this paragraph and let's go as far as we can with Mr. All right, so I'm going to withdraw my motion and let us vote on section J. Chair makes a motion to add the language for full-time employees only, period, to the end of the section.
Second.
Mr. Dietz,
No, yes,
Dorian,
Yes.
Mr. Zinsky, Mr.
Yes.
Rubenstein.
Yes.
All right. And the chair approves. All right. And we'll give some attention to that H. Thank you very much, Mr. Dietz. That's an excellent point.
please just specify exempt or non-exempt.
Okay. Section 13. I'm going to skip ahead for a minute and grab J while we can. I'd like to go to Bates 36. This is schedule, oh, sorry, not Bates 36. Bates 37, Schedule E. Chair proposes to strike from Schedule E the town council stipend in the amount of $1,704.33. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes,
Ms. Jasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. It is so stricken. Bates, page 38, Schedule F. Chair makes a motion to delete the current classification schedule and salary table and submit the classification schedule and salary table in the text box. This was proposed and approved by the Recreation Commission and approved by this board. Do we have a motion to accept the new Schedule F? I make a motion to
Second.
accept the new Schedule F.
Second.
Thank you,
Yes.
Dorian. Mr. Dietz,
yes,
Ms. Jasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes.
and the chair votes in the affirmative. We have a new Schedule F. Bates, page 39, Schedule H. This is just a change of language occasioned by taking out the word anniversary date. I would make a motion that we amend Schedule F to have it read longevity schedule. Full-time employees of town of
Sorry,
Southborough.
Schedule H. Schedule H. Schedule
H.
H, not F.
Oh,
Schedule
sorry.
H.
Did I say F? Schedule F. Thank you, Dorian. Motion to amend Schedule F by deleting the term at
Again.
anniversary. And
Hold on, Betsy, you keep reading Schedule F. It's Schedule H.
I said H.
You just said F again.
Wow.
That's-
I don't know how it's coming across as a Schedule H.
Okay.
To amend it by inserting the following language. Delete at anniversary and substitute on the anniversary of the employee's start date.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
yes,
Mr. Dietz,
yes,
Ms. Jasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
The chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. So I think we've covered everything. Thank you all very much. Except schedule. Just want to make sure we need to go back to
Page 11, Bates 30.
13. I just want to cruise through this and make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, Bates, page,
30.
just checking through, see, oh, Bates, page 35, Schedule C.
30.
Bates 35, Schedule C. To put an asterisk by the position of Public Health Director and add the same asterisk that we have on Schedule A when not under contract. Because there's a Board of Health statute that allows them to hire a Public Health Director, and it may be at a different salary. So this is similar to what we did with Schedule A. We have employees who have employment contracts with the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Purple, Mr. Ballantyne, Mr. Sabelli. Their positions may be in the SAP, sorry, not Mr. Purple's, but Mr. Ballantyne's and some others. So we dropped an asterisk a year or two ago to say that they're in the SAP at this grade when they're not under contract. So the chair makes a motion to add an asterisk to the Public Health Director, and the asterisk will read when not under contract. This is
Second.
Schedule C. Second, Dorian?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Ms. Jazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. All right, on Bates, page 36, this is the proposal from the fire chief for a new Schedule D, and that is going to be, I'm tabling that to the March meeting. And the fire chief will come back. He has had an approval from the Board of Selectmen, so we'll take that up. So I think unless we've missed something, the last bit of business is 13, section 13. Sorry, I'm a little out of order now. We are on Bates, page 30, section 13. I don't know, Mr. Dietz, how long you can hang around. You have two proposals from me.
Yeah, if you can just say, take off the scratch and add what's not there, I'm good. I can wait. If you're gonna read
I'm
the
sorry,
whole-
Jay, I couldn't hear you. What?
if you're gonna read the whole thing out, I gotta go. If we can do it quicker, then I'm in.
Well, we haven't decided. I took a look at section 13, A and B. I think I consulted with Vanessa on this. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Seemed to kind of subvert what the rest of the SAP was about. If all that's required to transition to full-time is that you work the hours, what do we do in the case of positions that aren't in the full-time schedule? So these were my options, either take it out and just reserve the section or section B. So I'm open to comments from the board.
My concern is, and I've seen this happen in the private sector, if you don't have some restriction on a department head using a part-time employee to do full-time work, whether it be because the full-time employee is out sick and he's using the part-time employee to cover, because it saves the department money to use the part-time person instead of the full-time person, it can be subject to abuse. Now, the current language, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, you can read it a couple of ways. It doesn't say they're automatically attain full-time status. It says they're eligible for it. At least you're putting some pressure on the department head to do something. I just worry that you could have department heads just keeping someone who's classified as a part-time employee doing full-time work, working 34 hours a week, as long as they can sort of get away with it without any pressure on them to do anything. That's my concern.
So thank you, Mr. Rubenstein. Your perspective is always very helpful to me and to the board. What do you propose? I feel uncomfortable leaving it as it is because it doesn't tell me what happens. I understand, and you show me there's a little daylight there. Part-time employee shall be eligible for full-time status. What do I do if a department head comes to me and says, I have a part-timer They've been working 20 hours or more per week, and the position isn't in the schedule. If all that's required to make someone a full-time employee is an agreement between the employee and the department head, what happens with the board's role in creating positions?
Well, they would have to come to us then and ask us to create a position. Either they have more work and can justify it, or, and I think this is more likely, they have an employee who's been out sick for an extended period, has a serious illness, and period goes by where they don't know whether that employee is ever coming back. And after 3 months, they say, okay, that employee is not coming back. I'm going to move this part-time employee into that existing full-time position. But clearly, they can't just put someone into a full-time position that didn't previously exist without the personnel board approving it.
I've not dealt with this, thank you, during my time on the board. We did have a request from the clerk's office to take a look at a situation there, and then it was withdrawn. And the clerk has contacted me. He returned to office this week, and he would like to proceed with that. And he and I will be reviewing his materials, and that will be on your agenda for March. So maybe we could hold off on this because it's going to be my actual first time. So this involves the clerk being absent and the 2 people that work for him stepping up, the assistant, and I'll let him describe the circumstances. But suffice to say, I'm going to be dealing with this. It's a case of first impression for me, and we'll be talking to the clerk in March where this section is implicated. So maybe we should put a hold on it. Mr. Rubenstein, do you have a particular suggestion? Do you think there's a problem with the section, or should we leave it alone? What is your recommendation?
Okay.
If you have one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to give it more thought. I guess I'm not as troubled by the current language as you may be, but that doesn't mean I don't think it couldn't be improved. So I would table it, and I'll certainly give it more thought in the interim.
Thank you. Mr. Dietz, before we lose you, do you have an opinion on section 13?
Nope, I'll agree with the group.
All right. Ms. Jasinski, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm in agreement with the group right now.
All right. So we will table this. Thank you very much, Mr. Rubenstein. I appreciate it. All right. I think we're done unless anybody else has anything on SAP.
Nope.
I think we're done for today. And the last matter is the tuition reimbursement policy. Ms. Jasinski has some revisions she'd like the board to take a look at, and that we're going to, by agreement with Ms. Jasinski, we discussed this, we're going to table that to the March meeting because it just relates to a policy which doesn't have to be done before the SAP. It's something we would want to do and announce to folks for FY22. All right, does anybody have any other business? All right, then we're on board calendar. You take a look at your, we've been asked to calendar out 2 months. We're currently scheduled. Our only meeting is Wednesday, March 10th. I'd ask the board to look at Wednesday, April 7th or 14th. And I've been told that my understanding is with town meeting getting pushed out, if I were to meet with Ms. Esposito on April 15th or 16th, that would be time enough for the warrant. So this board could meet on the 14th. That's the latest word I have. So if you want to keep it to the second Wednesday, it would be April 14th. How does that work for folks?
Works for me.
All right. And by then we'll be done with the SAP, and I could meet with Lori at her convenience Thursday or Friday. Vanessa, does April 14th work for you? All right, great. All right, we are scheduled for Wednesday, April 14th. Thank you all. Anybody have anything under other business that came up in the last 48 hours? I'm aware of none. Thank you all. This great meeting. Thanks. We made a lot of progress. Sorry I had to drag you one by one, but that's how we do it. So we make sure we get it right. All right, thank you all. We are adjourned at 2:13. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Vanessa, did you get my banging on the? All right. Are we good?